Thank you, Mr. Bussey. You are live.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. I will call this meeting to order, a regular council meeting. It is our second electronic meeting, and I will read out under the Ministerial Order number 083, Emergency Program Act, RSBC 1996, C111, Section 10, under which this meeting is constituted. Ministerial Order M083, published March 26, 2020, under the Provincial State of Emergency declared on March 18th, overrides the Community Charter and Council Procedure Bylaw for this meeting. Section 3 waives the requirement to allow members of the public to attend an open meeting, and Section 6 allows all or part of a meeting to be by means of electronic or other communication facilities. This order is in place until March 18th, 2020, state of emergency is rescinded. Therefore, I call the regular council meeting of April 6th called to order. And item 2, due to the format of this meeting and the 60-second delay on the broadcast, council is unable to accept public input as part of the live meeting. I'll go on to item 3.1. Staff recommends that the April 6, 2020 regular council meeting agenda be adopted. I need someone to so move.
Councillor Weed.
And second.
Councillor Leach.
I'll call the question. Those in favor? Opposed, if any?
Motion carries.
Thank you. Item 4.1, that the March 12, 2020 special council meeting minutes be adopted as presented, and that the March 16th, do I have to do 2 of these or can I do them all in one resolution?
They may be done together as written, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. And that the March 16th, 2020 regular council meeting minutes be adopted as present. Who will so move?
Councillor Weed.
And seconded?
Councillor Hopful.
Any errors, omissions, or discussion? Failing that, I'll call the question. Those in favor? And opposed, if any?
Motion carried.
Thank you. There being no business arising from the minutes and no rise in report, we'll move on to item 7, which is correspondence and petitions. Items appearing on the correspondence report to be debated must be removed by motion and considered separately. The resolution to remove an item is that item, and I'm going to ask that item number 1, which is the CN service Williams Lake to Squamish corridor, be removed from the correspondence report for discussion under section 16 of new business of this regular council meeting. Anybody else have any other items of correspondence they wish removed?
No one has indicated, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Therefore, I require someone to move that the correspondence included in the staff report dated April 3rd be received for information except item number 1. Who will move?
Councillor Leach.
And second?
Councillor Hopful.
Okay. I'll call the question. Those in favor? Opposed, if any?
Motion carries.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, I will mention at this point that we have lost Councillor Howe. We will attempt to get her back, but we still have quorum at this time. Okay.
Thank you. We'll move on to item 8, reports from Committee of Council and Commissions. There being none, we'll move to item 9.1, reports and presentations of staff. In 9.1, the wastewater treatment plant needs assessment review, and staff recommends that $40,000 be released early from the 2020 budget for the wastewater treatment plant review, and that the needs assessment of the wastewater treatment plant review project be awarded to Urban Systems Limited, and further that the mayor and interim capital project administrator be authorized to execute all agreements to award the contract. Who will so move?
Councillor Weed,
And second?
Councillor Leach.
Okay, it's now open for discussion. I have one question I can lead off with, and then if council wishes to make comment, feel free after I'm completed. I'm asking whether we can hold off this needs assessment of the wastewater treatment plant until our new Director of Public Works is with us. And just want to check with Mr. Darling, who's done an admirable job with staff of piecing this all together. I understand that. I don't want to be overly pedantic, and I really appreciate how the work that's been done to do the background of this particular assessment requirement. I really would like to have a little bit more time with staff to understand it more, and bringing on the new public works person, I feel is not a bad idea to for us to consider. However, I'm asking staff if that has any merit or possibility at all. I'm going to mute now.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Darling, did you catch all of that?
Yes, I think so, Mr. Mayor. The project can be delayed, but there is concern. The new employee that you're getting to be the manager has limited knowledge of the District of Lillooet. There's a lot of history and information he's going to have to go through. Public works information, just day-to-day activities, water, wastewater, airport, all those things. We're looking at a 6-month project probably by the time it's done. Staff has, or the public works crew has identified this as a higher priority for them. It's been overlooked for years, and I think if we delayed it even further, then it might. I'm not sure that that's going to really resolve anything. It's going to take a lot of time for the new employee or the new manager to get up to what's going on in the district, and I think we should move forward. And I am committed to making sure that the public works crew is involved, and I'm committed to making sure that the new manager of public works, or I'm not sure what his title is, but I'm committed to making sure that he is involved as well, so that when the time is appropriate, he can take over and provide a lead role.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. If you could unmute your microphone.
Thank you, Mr. Darling. Any other comments from councillors?
Councillor Weed, please stand by. Go ahead.
Yes, I just wanted to express that I was not at the last meeting, so didn't know about a lot of these things. And I was kind of shocked to hear and read that people that are boots on the ground weren't really knowledgeable about the funding that was provided for these different projects. So I'm really pleased that we're including them now, and I really don't see any need to wait for the new gentleman starting if we're already including our public works staff that deals with this on a daily basis.
Councillor Howe, please stand by. Go ahead and unmute. You're live.
Thank you. I hear what Mayor Bussey is saying, and I understand where he's coming from, and normally I would agree. However, in understanding that there was some concern about the safety of the workers with this project and wanting, well, certain aspects of this project, and that being something that we wanted to take into consideration in moving this forward, I would like to see us go ahead. I do. I agree with Mr. Darling that that it'll take some time for the new manager to become acquainted with the procedures and processes here at our public works in Lillooet, and I think it may be helpful for them to come on as the ball is already in motion, and I don't think it'll take them long to get up to speed with that at all. Thank you.
Thank you. Please mute your microphone. Councillor Hoffel, please unmute.
Hi, so my question through the mayor is to Mr. Darling. My understanding is the needs assessment would identify weaknesses in the system and set priorities based on the urgency of any repairs and set replacement schedules for whatever we're going to do, the basic needs. But I have to wonder, like the outfall assessment, it said that during a recent replacement of a section of the outfall on the foreshore of the Fraser River, staff found that the section of the pipe had completely disintegrated. This observation raised concerns about the possible deterioration of the remainder of the outfall and suggested an inspection of the outfall should be conducted as soon as possible. So I would just have to wonder, if the staff found that the section of the pipe had completely disintegrated, wouldn't it be, I mean, do we have to spend money to get an assessment to say, geez, perhaps the rest of the pipe is also disintegrated, and if it's not disintegrated completely, it probably is close to it. Why would we need to spend money on an assessment? Why don't we just replace the whole thing? Because all of these quotes just to find out and get the assessments are about $100,000 altogether.
Go ahead, Mr. Darling.
Yeah, if we're talking about the outfall, there's one of the concerns is that we're passing the window of opportunity to actually inspect it. And staff, when they looked at it, they did a replacement, and it was on the foreshore, and it was a very small section. So nobody really knows what's happening out in the water. So we want to find out, what is happening. So the logic that we had was to do the initial the bypass, which was approved at the last meeting, and this needs assessment, and the outfall, even if it has to be replaced, nothing can be done until next year. And so we're trying to be proactive where we can be, but rather than delaying everything until next year, we're hoping that we can proceed with the like the 4 things staff have identified, one of them being the outfall, but that really can't proceed, even if there is a problem with it. The construction and installation of that can't proceed until next year because the water's starting to rise, and we're beyond the opportunity for this year. And I should note that like all 4 of these items, when I last worked for Lillooet, all 4 of the items were on the drawing board to get looked after, and they still haven't been. And it's a frustration for staff that like these things aren't progressing forward. And part of that is they're not knowing what kind of funds that the council had provided in the past. And so the outfall is important, but we've missed the boat this year, and the construction, if it's going to happen, will happen next year.
Go ahead, Councillor Hoffel.
So if all 4 of these, which I totally believe, all 4 of these were on previous assessments, then why do we need another assessment? Can we not just move on and get these done?
Go ahead, Mr. Darling. When I say all 4 of them were on the agenda, they were all spoken about the last time I was there. There was lots of things spoken about when I was there last time, and there doesn't seem to be anything that has moved forward. So the outfall replacement, though it was talked about, there was never any investigation done to see if it actually has to be replaced, if it has to stay in the same place, if it could be moved to another location. None of that stuff, none of that investigation took place. The needs assessment, there was talk about it, the plant's getting older and things, it's like having a car, things start falling apart, but nothing was ever done. So, though they were all on, discussed, it's never moved forward to the point where, we can actually take a look at it, identify what has to be done, and then move forward, you know, knowing what the actual costs are going to be moving forward.
Go ahead, Councillor Hoffel.
Sorry, can I just ask then, is there a previous needs assessment? Was a previous needs assessment completed?
Go ahead, Mr. Darling.
Sorry, I didn't catch that.
Was a previous needs assessment needed?
Completed.
Completed.
Not that I know of. No, there's been discussions through staff, and that's part of the problem is that staff has not been involved in the budgetary process, and so they don't know what monies are there, and so they come up with piecemeal ideas, you know, like they need a certain pump, or you know, they got a ventilation problem or whatever, but there's no actual plan on how to deal with all this stuff. And the management team that was before, and I don't like to, you know, say bad things about people, but there was no involvement from the staff, and so it was never moved forward. And so there was never a needs assessment. And what it's really doing is it's not looking at the treatment plant and saying the treatment plant is falling apart and we have to change the process, and you know, like there's big issues. What it's saying is that, you know, these pumps are 10 years old, and in 2 years they're going to fail, and we've got to put some money aside to replace those pumps. And we have work environments where staff needs ventilation, and we've got to look at you know, improving the safety where staff is, and that's what it looks at. And that has never been done that I know of. That they've actually gone in and they've taken a look at everything that's in the plant and said, you know, what are the concerns? Ask staff, and that would be one of the big things that I would have, is that the staff are involved in the discussion about what their concerns are to make sure they're addressed. And then we come back with council with a plan that says, okay, the costs are going to be X amount of dollars. Well, you know, the district alone can't afford it this year. So what we're going to do is we're going to say, well, these are the priorities, which is the staff safety and these issues, and we're going to deal with those in 2021, 2022, and the next 3 years we'll deal with these other items that are a bit more expensive, but that can be delayed. But that's never been done. I mean, you know, it's an older treatment plant and it needs some work. So,
Councillor Hoffel, do you have another follow-up? Thank you. Councillor Leach, could you unmute your microphone, please? Go ahead.
Yes, hello. As to what Mayor Bussey was saying in terms of the new public works manager being here from the time that the needs assessment is started. Oh, hold on. Is my mic unmuted? I'm getting a notification that it's not.
No, we are hearing you. Okay,
thanks. Sorry. Is it a matter of weeks? Like our public works manager is due to start fairly soon. Is he not?
I'm going to put this over to Mr. Denegar. Please unmute your microphone. Go ahead.
Yes, I can confirm that our new Director of Works and Utilities will be starting on Friday, May 1st, and he's already receiving correspondence internally that's being directed to him regarding this and other projects.
Councillor Leach, do you have a follow-up? Does anyone on council have anything else? Mayor Bussey, please unmute your microphone.
Thank you. Thank you, councillors. Just to be clear, I'm certainly not against the requirement for the assessment review. My only concern was obviously two of them actually, and the one of them is that we have a new leader coming on board, and although it may be assumed that the contribution may not be that much, but I can assure you, and based on experience, that when this study is being done, if that individual is here along with the rest of staff, it will go a long way for complete understanding in terms of where it should go, rather than hearing it from other staff or other people's second or third hand information. So that's where I was really leading to, is not necessarily that we don't do the study, I think it's important that that individual comes. So if staff feels it's necessary to do before the individual arrives, then I would ask that would staff contact the person, have arrange for it on the weekend, whatever the case might be, whatever staff feels it works. I just believe it's important that individual is here when Urban Systems is on site, and that'll be a good way for him to get started. The second item, which is just kind of a pet peeve of mine, is when we throw the safety moniker in there, it's kind of like, hey, you guys better listen, do what I tell, and I always tend to resist that, because from my perspective, I take the purest route, and that if there's something unsafe, better fix it, and fix it right now, because we don't want staff working on that. We don't need the safety aspect there in order to do the assessment. Anything unsafe should be repaired right away. And finally, I really appreciate what staff has done in this report and how clear it is. And it also has caused me to fall off my pontification like I did from the last meeting. And I think they've chosen the right consultant, or let's say engineering group, because they were initially involved and not chosen when the plant was first designed. So again, without repeating too much, I'm all in favor of the study going ahead and the amount of money. I just feel strongly that individual should be here, and I'm sure staff can figure out a way to make that happen. Is that possible?
Mr. Denegar, would you please unmute your microphone? Go ahead.
Yes, we'll start communicating with Rory, our new director. We already have been communicating with him, so we'll make sure he's prepped and aware. If this gets authorized by council tonight, he'll have information headed his direction. And I'm going to ask Don Darling if he can answer council's question. If it's approved tonight, realistically, how soon till Urban Systems would actually get started on the project? Are we a week away or 3 weeks away?
Go ahead, Mr. Darling.
I'm actually not sure. I think it could be delayed. I think it's more important that the budget be approved and that we move forward. We can provide information to the new manager of Public Works and make sure that he's included in everything that goes on. The main meeting will be the one, not necessarily the initial meeting, because I don't think that the new manager in 6 months will be have sufficient information to assess what is really needed at the wastewater treatment plant. It's the next meeting that's going to be the important one, and that's going to be the one where the consultants walk through with staff and identified what's gone on, and then they're talking about the actual issues of the plant, and somebody with expertise, and I believe the new manager has expertise in wastewater, he will then be able to assess what should be the priorities at that point in time. And I don't see that happening before we're in April, and I believe, I'm not sure, but I believe he starts in 1st of May or something. I don't see that happening before the 1st of May, and if it was, we could easily delay it. But I just think, we want to move forward because we're looking at a 6-month project. We want to get it done by the end of the year so that we can budget, into the next year.
Thank you, Mr. Darling. Mayor Bussey, would you please unmute your microphone? Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Denegar, Mr. Darling. As again, I'll just reiterate, there's no level of expectation from my part that he has to contribute a lot, but I feel it goes a long way if indeed the consulting group are on an on-site visit, that individual is there listening to everything that happens. And as far as I'm concerned, it can contribute large part. I guess a quick answer by staff would have been, we'll use our best efforts, and I would be quite happy with that. Councillors, any more information or conversation you'd like to have with regard to this before I call the question?
No indication, Mr. Mayor.
Do I get confirmation that best efforts will be used?
Mr. Darling, do you confirm that best efforts will be used?
Thank you. Okay. I'm going to call the question. Those in favor? Against, if any?
Motion carries.
Thank you kindly, Council. Item 9.2, Water Advisory Committee, Terms of Reference. Staff recommends that the terms of reference for Water Advisory Committee be approved and that staff proceed with the Water Advisory Committee selection process and submit their recommended list of community stakeholders to Council for consideration. I'd just like you to know there that I've got these big 3 letters with exclamation marks behind it. Yes. Who will so move?
Councillor Howe.
Seconded?
Councillor Hoffel.
Okay. Any comments, questions? I have one. I am absolutely delighted with the approach that's been taken. I have fantastic terms of reference. Thank you so much, staff. It certainly meets and exceeds my level of expectation of where we are going to go with our water in the future for the next 2 years. Councillors, anything to discuss or comment?
No one from council has a comment, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, I'll call the question. Those in favor? Against? Any?
Motion carries.
Thank you, Council. Okay. Item 9.3, early budget approval, emergency notification. Staff recommends that the 2020 budget item, community emergency alerting system at a value of $2,200 receive early budget approval. Who will move?
Councillor Howe.
Seconded.
Councillor Leach.
Any discussion?
Councillor Hoffel, can you please unmute your microphone?
So I just have a question about this. So sometimes I think we get notifications over our phones from the province, stating an emergency. Would this be all of those things to Lillooet over our phones, or I know it said over our SMNs or email app notification, SMS, or conventional voice dial-up messages. So would we get these on an ongoing basis then?
With the Director of Protective Services, please unmute. Go ahead.
Through you, Mayor. Just to start, I will use my best efforts to answer the question for sure. Lori, so what it's, Councillor Hoffel, what it is that the system will be managed by the District of Lillooet. So those systems that you were talking about are managed by the province and the alerting system, so we can connect into those messages. So they will be directly related to District of Lillooet managing that. So they could be like in this case, the COVID-19 messages we could get out to the masses. So the people would have to subscribe to it. So if we go in, we get them to subscribe in an app, but it also allows us to do email, so they can register by email to receive a message, or the SMS is just text basically, right? So that's what that means, text messages, or for those, the population that don't have the devices, just the dial-up telephone. So all 4 mechanisms can be utilized and will be utilized through this funds if you do approve it. So it doesn't limit who can receive it, right? So we have multitudes of ways to get that message out there. But yes, you're right, it can be tied into the VCTEL and those overall government messages as well as our own and do those. So we can, the system itself is the why I'm recommending is we can expand after this. So if we wish to, into public works, like say if we have a service announcement that there's some pipes being done in a certain location, those we can just message those that are affected by a certain area. So it allows us to expand and contract the messaging system as we see fit, right? So case in point, if we don't look at the COVID, if we look at a wildfire situation where in one section there is a order put in place and maybe let's say the surrounding area to the west of it is on just alert, we could give two different messages by using the system. So by which they're getting an alert in one area and an order in the next, right? So it's a very robust system. And I have spoken, and the gentleman did come out, did a presentation for us. It is very intuitive. So all of these, we don't want a hard to learn system. It's a web-based system as well, and we can put out fairly quickly messages as we're doing it. And it can easily be done from if the person has their administrative rights on the roads, so remotely as we are, like this case, right? So it's not tied to one computer at one spot. So the support team that they have in place now is tremendous. They've given us some access to different things if we were going to be helping them in development. So giving feedback on the certain things that are happening, they're going to give us discounts for those as well. So we're also looking at it because it can be expanded to our neighbors. So we buy into the system. The idea is to get our neighboring communities to buy into the system as well. We can be integrated or we can be separated off. So just being that, let's say the First Nation communities are right off of our borders, we can actually, they can have their own system or tied into our system as jointly, let's say in an emergencies, or they can use it as public works, just normal notification. So boil alert advisories or water main breakages, those types of minimal things. So it's very, very robust system, but very simple to use. So sorry.
Councillor Hoffel, if you could unmute your microphone.
So if I was in Kamloops and I had these messages coming over as a text message on my phone, I was in Kamloops and something happened at the 10-mile slide and the road was closed, and you put out that message, I would get that while I was in Kamloops?
Please unmute your microphone, Mr. Oiki.
Yes, you would. Yes.
Councillor Hoffel, did you have another follow-up?
No, just thank you.
Anyone else from council? Mr. Mayor, if you would please unmute your microphone.
Thank you. I'll now call the question. Those in favor? Opposed, if any?
Motion carries.
Thank you, council. Item 9.4, early budget approval score clock. Staff recommends that the approval be given for early release of $5,500 for the purchase of and installation of a new score clock for the Rec Center Arena. Who will so move?
Councillor Howe.
Seconded.
Councillor Wiebe.
Any discussion?
None indicated, Mr. Mayor.
I'll call the question. Those in favor? Opposed, if any?
Motion carries.
Thank you, council. Item 9.5, I think this is part of our procedural bylaw revision or 2020 council meetings revision. Staff recommends that the May 19th and June 15th, 2020 regular council meetings be cancelled, and that the revised 2020 schedule of council meetings attached to the staff report dated April 2nd be adopted. And that until the March 18th, 2020 Provincial State of Emergency is rescinded, all meetings of council will take place electronically in accordance with the Minister of Public Safety and Solicitor General's Order Number M083. And further, that until March 18th, 2020 Provincial State of Emergency is rescinded, electronic meetings of council will convene at 5:30 p.m. Who will so move?
Councillor Leach.
Second.
Councillor Howe.
Okay. Any discussion? I'll call the question. Those in favor? Opposed, if any?
Motion carries.
Thank you, council. We'll move to item 9.6, presentation, demonstration, and activation of a new meeting web portal. I just want to remark before turning it over to staff and how astute our staff is, because obviously thinking that I'm not that, how you say, IT challenged like people would think of me at that age. I figured that we would go into Zoom and utilize that particular platform. And very quickly, I started reading to it. I know our CAO said, no, we won't go that way. And I think if anybody's read what's happening with Zoom now, smart move by our staff. Thank you kindly for keeping us on the straight and narrow. And I'm just wondering, is there any possibility to, and maybe I'm out of turn here, but something, if the people who happen to be watching live can at least type in some questions or the like. I'll turn this over to staff now, and thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This particular program does have the ability for a Q&A. At the moment, we're just trying one feature at a time so that we don't overload council and staff as we all get to learn this system. Hopefully, if they continue to go this smoothly, we will activate that. And at the end of the meetings, we'll be able to read out some of those questions from the public. Moving on to the demonstration. So at the moment, in order for the public to access agendas or minutes, this is the screen that they see. It's not particularly intuitive, although it is a very functional document management system. So to find, say, today's agenda, you would have to go here, then to regular council meetings, then to agendas, then to 2020. It's quite a few clicks is what I'm getting at here. And then eventually you end up at your agenda. What we've moved forward to and what we're going to be activating tomorrow is the Lillooet portal. So it's a bit more user-friendly. The first thing you'll see here is the home page, which we can tailor to our needs. We have the calendar, which once I send this live, I will populate with all of the meetings for the year, where people can go in and see what meetings there are that month and jump forward and back. By clicking on these, it will take them right to the agendas and minutes. You can click on the meetings tab, in which they will see the current and the two most recent meetings. And by clicking on that, it will take them to a much easier to read and access agendas page. Also, if you go back to a previous meeting, you'd be able to select the agendas and minutes from the same panel, so you don't have to go searching for these things. Another interesting thing, which is going to be good for council when they learn to use this system, is this split screen function. And this is what the CAO and I use in order to navigate through the agendas on the computer. So you'll notice here we have our agenda on the left here. It is just the agenda. It doesn't have any of the attachments. And as we're working through the agenda, you can click on the attachment and it will load on the right side of the screen. So that you can make sure that you keep your place on the agenda while also viewing the attachments. Another interesting function of this, and anyone can use this, the public council staff, is this notes button. So you turn on your notes and then select your item, and you have a notes thing at the bottom of the screen. And that will save on whatever browser you're on, as long as you're keeping your cache and your cookies and you're not deleting those every time. As you change items, you will notice on the left here that it's still indicating a note, so you can add multiple notes into your agenda package, and then you can click the print button at the top. And we have a lot of bandwidth being used at the moment, which is why it's taking so long to load. and your notes will actually print on the agenda right there. So if you want to spend some time at home, you can enter in all of your notes into here and then print off your agenda package to hopefully we'll all meet together again sometime, and then you can have your notes there on your agenda waiting for you. So hopefully this is going to make it a little bit easier for everyone to navigate the system. One more thing I would like to show here is the search function. If the computer's going to keep up with me here. Anyways, the search function goes through that document center that I showed at the beginning here. And so if you type in a keyword from a report or a attachment onto an agenda that you remember from maybe a year ago, it'll search just this document center. So it'll be a little more functional as we move forward. The example I was going to give, but my browser appears to not be happy with me, was searching for CN, and it brought up immediately the letter from CN. So if you remember 2 years from now, some report or some agenda item that you were trying to look up, you'll be able to use that search function to find it. It will look different for the public and for internal members. So council and staff will be able to see any closed meetings as well that they have access to. This will be going live tomorrow. And as soon as we do, we will start on the next phase, which is upgrading the action tracker, so that we'll be able to better track council resolutions and make sure that we're getting everything done that you're resolving for us to do. So that was a short demonstration on that. Does anyone have any questions? Okay, I will put it back to you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Taylor. Bounding ahead, leaps and bounds in the IT world. We appreciate your leadership. Item 10, bylaws and resolution, there be none. We'll go to item 11, works in progress. And I need someone to move that the work in progress as of April 2nd be received for information. Who will so move?
Councillor Weeb.
Second.
Councillor Howe.
Thank you. Just a bit of discussion given the efforts and energy staff have put into the COVID-19 and EOC. Obviously not a lot of time to be able to spend on some of these, but there has been progress made. We thank staff for that. Any comments by council?
No comments indicated.
Call the question. Those in favor? Opposed, if any?
Motion carries.
Thank you. No notice of motion. We'll move to item 13, report from the mayor. Since our last regular meeting of council on March 16th, the provincial emergency measures have taken center stage for the works of staff and council. The 2 weeks since essentially consumed with various calls, virtual meetings with provincial ministers, their staff, and how our communities are to relate in terms of adopting the measures that emergency measures that they have put into place. Staff during that period initiated our EOC and distributed the necessary information to the public via website, Facebook, and Twitter. And I think that our staff has done a fantastic, admirable job with that. Very much proud of how you've led our community and the interrelations that you have with the other surrounding communities as well as the businesses. So various messages were submitted in terms of dealing with this COVID-19 crisis, and I put on our Facebook page, website, as well as Twitter. Also liaised with our MLA, MP, and some businesses, as well as chiefs and councils of our neighboring communities, and joint statements were made. April the 2nd saw the OCP kickoff with our first electronic meeting, our virtual meeting with MODIS, council, and staff, and happy to say that our corporate officer said that we didn't bungle it too much, and he was rather pleased with the method, with the way that that council adhered to his requirements. Council's first virtual meeting was held, and thanks to staff for very quickly arranging, and that's to deal with our tax rates, which we discussed and gave direction to staff, which will be coming up. I just want to say that I think the staff has done a tremendous job with the EOC, and the present challenge of COVID-19, we are in safe hands, and you've shown us that, and I do appreciate that. My head, as I'm saying, I'm already looking forward to how the heck this community can come out of this dramatic downturn. And we've been kicked in the pants with forestry. We have the CN now. We got tourism looking so dismal ahead. My mind is thinking, you know, we've got to plan and work with our surrounding communities, our First Nations communities. And I'm looking at a possible task force that we come together for ideas to get the quickest possible recovery that we can, engaging the federal and provincial authorities along the way, that we can offer a level of protection to get our businesses up and running, and see what we can do about gaining them some relief in terms of the time that it's there. So as I said, my head is there, and thank you, council, for approving that extra min position, because I think even myself, and particularly the CAO, we've got a lot of work to do, and we've got to get our recovery going the fastest possible way, and engaging very many people in that regard. Thank you. Councillor Hoffel.
Hi, okay, so I attended the March 16th regular council meeting. April 1st was the pre-virtual tryout, which I am at the district office for. I'll just say I'm at the district office. April 2nd, the virtual OCP planning, and then the committee of the whole on the finance. So first of all, I'd just like to thank the staff. You guys have done an amazing job. And Kevin, just going through our new district site, that's wow, that's just something. And we are so lucky to have you guys, all of you. You are just great. For anybody that didn't get a chance to read the paper, I did write a letter to the editor this past week, and basically it thanks the residents of Lillooet for self-isolating. I know it's hard out there, and I think our community is doing an awesome job of doing what we have to do. I also put a big thank you to all of those people that go to work every day to make our community great, to continue to have our needs met. They put themselves out there with no mask, no gloves, often, and face to face, and it's really hard. And I just want to thank everybody that goes to work every day like that. And we just have a great community, and I'm so proud to be a part of that. Thank you.
Next up is Councillor Howe.
Thank you. Okay. First of all, shout out to our staff. You guys have been our steady rock amongst all of this. I've had countless conversations with our CAO, and sometimes feeling rather panicked about measures and protocol. But most often coming out of the conversation feeling a lot more at ease and having some really great concepts and thought-provoking ideas to mull over. So thank you to all of you guys. And through all of this, you have found time to work on our website and get that functioning at a capacity that serves us and our constituents well. So I'm really excited about this. Thank you. Now into what I've been up to. March 18th, the Emergency Chamber of Commerce Board meeting in response to the current events. The March 19th was the Chamber of Commerce regular meeting. I would have to say that the director of the Chamber of Commerce, Andrea Nacy, has been doing a phenomenal job at keeping the board members up to speed. I know that she's been in close communications with Mr. Denegar, our CAO, in regards to what the district is up to, any additional communications that are coming through to her via the Chamber of Commerce resources, and Mr. Denegar in response to that as well. So it's incredible to watch this happen, to see the types of communications that are coming out of this, and everybody seems to have a pulse now. It's positive. It gives me great hope. March 25th was our EOC meeting. March 31st was the NDIT meeting. That was helpful. I mean, that there was some great information out of there. They decided on who the funding would go to. You can go to their website if you want to know who and when. But there were some tidbits that I brought out of that as well. One of them was, speaking with our EOC chair about plans for wildlife evacuation wildfire evacuation should COVID-19 still be in crises effects. So I actually spoke with Fire Chief Darren Oiki about this, and he had let me know, of course, and I should never have thought otherwise, that he is already figuring this out and working with the proper figureheads in coming up with a plan around that. So that was enlightening. Wednesday, April 1st was a planning session with Councillor Leach, followed by a Chamber of Commerce board meeting. They are meeting once a week right now, so they are on it in terms of communicating efforts and what each business represented there is experiencing and in need of. And that was then followed by a council online communication platform test, which I think went really well. Well done, staff. April 2nd was a BC Economic Development Association meeting, also known as the BC EDA. And out of that meeting, actually, that was a crossover. The Chamber of Commerce director was there, as well as my second to liaison, which was Councillor Leach, and I think we all walked away with some information that we've been in communication with our CAO, Mr. Denegar, about. So a lot of really helpful ways that the district can aid the local businesses through COVID and coming out of. And sorry, I'm flipping through my notebook and I've gone and lost my darn page.
With the new website, Councillor Howe, you'll be able to put notes right into your agenda and it'll all be in front of you.
I am so excited about that feature. Thank you. It's like you just anticipate our needs. Okay, so the BC EDA meeting was then followed by an OCP the meeting with Modus, our OCP consulting company, our official community plan consulting company kickoff, which I walked away feeling really positive. I'm excited about what they're going to be bringing to the table for us and this community and moving forward. I can't wait to really get into it. And that was followed by a committee of the whole, our tax and budgeting. And April 3rd was a tourism Lillooet meeting, in which case we had Andrea, again, the director for the Chamber of Commerce. She was there to sort of fill in any gaps and questions that may have come up during that meeting, as well as Mr. Denegar, regarding just some of the strategic plan questions that they may have had. And I think overall it was a great start to their upcoming conversation. So I'm looking forward to hearing more from that group as well. And that is it for me. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Leach, please unmute your microphone. Go ahead.
Hello. All right. So March 31st, I had the introductory meeting with the NDIT RAC committee, or introductory meeting for me. It was kind of thrown right into things. So I'm just currently learning the processes and the way the committee works, and I heard a lot of familiar voices that I was able to put faces to, that I had met at UBCM and also at LGLA. So I'm sure I will get more familiar with them as time goes on. On April 2nd, I jumped on the BCEDA response and restart teleconference. There was a lot of great information that I'm still trying to go through as we were given the slides to bring back to our communities. And I'm sure that as we go into the different phases of the EOC, that information will be quite helpful. And then right after that, jumped into the official community plan, the virtual meeting with Modus. And I'm quite excited and looking forward to continuing that process. I'm glad we were able to start it, even though the stumbling block with having to be virtual. And then again, right after that, jumped into the Committee of the Whole budget meeting for our tax rates. And I am pleased that we're all kind of on the same page as to, trying to find relief for our community. And so I look forward to the next council meeting that comes forward so we can get that rolling. And as the only other thing I wanted to comment on the district site that you guys are launching tomorrow, the fact that you guys have been able to pull this off during all of this new technology that we're trying to manage is phenomenal. So great work, guys. And that's all I've got.
Thank you, Councillor Leach. Councillor Weeb, would you please unmute your microphone? Go ahead.
Have you ever had anybody say no? I don't want to unmute my microphone. Okay, I haven't been as busy as everyone else because I am very much in isolation because I have an essential worker out there that does all my bidding for me. And it's wonderful. I'm getting right into it because I'm finding the less you have to do, the less you want to do. On March 18th, I did attend the SLRD meeting in Pemberton, and it was basically all about how to handle the COVID-19, how they're going to do their meetings, budgets, all those kind of things. So not much to report on any other business that went on there. There was 6 of us at a very drawn out table and 5 on the phone. So it was just, they needed that 6-person fanny in the room in order to have their quorum. On March 26th, I did a conference call with the Thompson Regional Hospital Board meeting. And that as well was mostly budget and how they were going to move on with the COVID crisis. I was really surprised that they're still working on the towers and whatnot in Kamloops, but I guess business goes on and they just figure out how to make it happen. On April 1st, we did our live test, which I thought went very well, thanks to Kevin and our little stand-up comedian there. He's wonderful. April 2nd, I attended the OCP kickoff with Modus virtually as well. And I can't remember if it was that meeting or after our Committee of the Whole budget meeting that I made the promise that at the end of all this, I would be virtually electronically savvy. And now I want to renege on that because now that I've seen this half page and writing notes and I'm like really overwhelmed. I will be going to computer programming school or something now in order to catch up. But everybody in the office has done a wonderful job. Everybody at the EOC has done a wonderful job. Can't say enough. That's it for me.
Thank you, Councillor Weeb. Mayor Bussey, may I go directly to 15.1, the CAO report?
Yes, please.
Thank you, Mr. Denegard. Please unmute.
Thank you. Yes, I just have a couple of items today to give council an update on. As recently as today, I was discussing high-speed fiber optics with LittenNet. They're still on track, wanting to push forward with that for our community. They, like us, have been hit hard by the COVID-19 pandemic, both with their own staffing requirements, having to think about keeping distance from customers and each other, and just the increasing demands on their technical services to try to serve people who are all of a sudden having to work from home. But we've all felt it ourselves. Some of you may be feeling it right now. The limitations of not high-speed internet are problematic for our community, both for this particular instance, for home workers, and just to try to bring in businesses that require high-speed internet. So both LittenNet and the district are exploring ways of co-funding, pulling out fiber to our community right to the door. So those discussions will be continuing, hopefully in the next few months. We probably won't be working on it during the pandemic, but we want to try to have everything lined up so that we can get going as soon as this is over and we get somewhat back to normal life. So just like to give an update on that. It is still happening. The talk is a number of councils and communities are talking about is what next? How do we start recovering from this when that comes? Are we going to be prepared for it? So the NDIT did send out an email late last week reminding all its members that the economic development capacity building program is actually quite broad. It doesn't simply have to be for an economic development officer. And they have extended the deadline, thankfully, until the end of this month. So I've reached out to our grant writer, which we did get a grant from NDIT to have a grant writer. So I reached out to her and she's on board with helping us out putting in an application to that program so that we can get a business liaison officer fully paid for by NDIT to be the go-between between the district and our business community. To take some pressure off of me. I'm doing what I can, but my time is split in many, many ways. So if we can get this to happen, we'll get somebody dedicated to it. And there's a number of suggestions that NDIT gave for this position. It could be a liaison. They could staff a call center to help small businesses get connected to resources. They could help out with communications online and so forth. Most importantly, right now, they could start coming up with the recovery plan for the business community so that when doors can start being opened, we can start getting customers in the businesses again. And working with those businesses that have been hit hard and maybe struggling with paying off the debts they've racked up in this time. So this person, ideally, if we get the grant, would be dedicated to that, in and above what the district's going to continue doing itself and what myself and Kevin and the mayor will be working on in any task force that may be formed. So just thought council should know that that is happening. That's all I've got.
Thank you, Mr. Denegar. Mr. Bessie, please unmute.
Thank you. Thank you, councils, for your reports, and thank you, Mr. Denegar. We'll go to item 16.1, new business, and I will move that the correspondence from CN, from Manager Public Affairs West, Lindsay Brumwell, be tabled, and I will not read the whole letter. I say at times of diminished customer demand, etc., effective of April 3rd to 8th, 2020, and in conjunction with our employed blah, CN will suspend train service between Williams Lake and Squamish, the blah, 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 da, 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 da. Okay, so I'd like to table this, please. I move it. Who seconds?
Councillor Leach.
Okay, discussion. Before I turn it over to council, I just want councillors to know that I've been in discussion with the mayor of 100 Mile, Mitch Kamsel, and needless to say, it impacts that community probably more than what we have. They were on the verge of having a fiber business coming to their community to help replace some of the work lost from the mills and the forestry downturn. obviously from our perspective, in discussions with local people in the know in terms of forestry fiber, there is that available in our area, and it's a matter of being able to bring the heads that have the experience together to see if we can capitalize on that in order to make up for the downturn, the losses. However, needless to say, the CN letter is as a kick in the pants, and Mayor Council was all ready to go to Victoria, and I offered that we would support him and go with him. So from my perspective, I'm hoping that we can offer a letter of support for the communities of us being one, because it impacts our how you say it impacts our employees in this community. I've gone farther. I should have waited for somebody seconded. Yeah, I did. Okay, so I'm following proper procedure then. I was just worried that I was discussing before it was tabled. Thank you. That's my piece. I'd like to hear from other councillors.
Thank you. I have Councillor Leach. If you could please unmute your microphone.
Hello. So sorry, Mayor Bussey, I should have jumped in before it got tabled. I am going to excuse myself from any vote. Mr. Denegar has explained I don't necessarily have a conflict of interest because it does affect a certain percentage of our community. So I would like to be privy to discussion, but if you call a vote or a motion to anything, I will not be participating, and I hope that that's the correct way to say that, Mr. Denegar, or let me know if I'm need to say something else.
Councillor Leach, this is Kevin. Before the vote, I will physically remove you from the live stream. Then that will be similar to you leaving the room. And then once a vote, if any, is finished, I will invite you back in. Mr. Denegar, did you have something to add?
Yes. Sorry. This will be the one time I'll disagree with our corporate officer on that. If you're going to be recusing yourself from the meeting because of a potential conflict of interest or an appearance of conflict of interest, which is what I'm hearing from you, you have to completely leave the discussion. So you can watch the live stream, but you can't participate in any way, and you shouldn't be on screen because it's considered in law that your presence itself can have an effect on the vote. So if you want to go to another room and watch it live streaming and then come back when we're done, that would be the correct procedure. Otherwise, you are expected to vote. That's up to you.
Go ahead, Councillor Leach.
So can I get up from the meeting but still have it playing in the background to listen? And then
Yes.
I don't know. I know it's hard because it's electronic and I'm a bit confused.
Yeah, that would be sufficient. If you were in the room physically, you'd have to leave the room, but going off camera and being quiet would be the equivalent.
Okay, so that's what I'm gonna go do. Thank you. Clarity. All right.
Does anyone else from council have any questions? Councillor Hopful, please unmute.
So in this letter, it says that CN will suspend train service between Williams Lake and Squamish. Does it say anywhere that this is temporary or permanent?
Mr. Denegar, would you like to address this?
Yeah, from the information we gathered, and I believe the mayor can back this up, I believe he's had similar conversations, that CN has been unwilling to commit either way. They're being quite obtuse about it. They never say anything is permanent, so we honestly don't know.
Councillor Hopful has a follow-up. Go ahead.
So is that something that we could get in writing, perhaps? Or is it just kind of a wait and see game based on what's going on in our world?
Go ahead, Sierra.
I'll let the mayor say something in just a moment, but yes, we can certainly follow up in writing with them and request that they provide us more information in writing.
Mayor Bussey, did you have a comment?
Yes, thank you. Yeah, in keeping with what our CEO is saying, you can also potentially consider this as kind of dipping the toe in the water. I mean, some corporations are notorious for doing that, to see exactly how much backlash comes from political. That's why I feel it's important that we really strongly come out in strong support of keeping the service along the corridor. Obviously, we're not as impacted as 100 Mile. So teaming up with 100 Mile and applying maximum political pressure. The MP, Brad Viss, is really paying attention, and also our MLA, Jackie Taggart. We've got to keep pushing them, and I feel that, and I've seen some basic statements. I can't recall whether it's our CAO or one of the councillors have made some rationale that I think would be appropriate to put in this letter. But I feel that the mayor of 100 Mile would really appreciate a letter of support, and we do everything we can to protect the jobs of that community. And I have a possible suspicion, if there's enough political pressure applied, there may be a bit of back down, but nobody can guarantee. And I think it's as Mr. Deniger says, obviously they weren't very specific in it, and that's a signal right there to say there's not a full commitment. It's like half commitment. It's kind of like, hey, we're going to try this out and then wait and see what happens. And we've got to be strong on this issue, I feel.
Thank you. Councillor Weeb, can you please unmute? Go ahead.
I just had a couple of comments made, and they've probably been somewhere along the way already made. I think it's unfortunate that the way that they've handled this, like none of the people or the employees basically got previous notice to this other than this letter. So there was a lot of gossip going on before the letter was even received by the district. And I think it's wonderful that they put in there that they contacted their contractors or whatever, people that use their train service, but they didn't bother to contact the small towns that the train tracks go through. That's my number one big beef. And I understand that there's probably more job loss in 100 Mile, but a dozen families in this small town are going to be affected by this if this train rail service stops. And for a small town like ours, a dozen families is major. And I also think that it would be a stronger proposal if we did use the provincial levels of Jackie Taggart and Brad Viss. I fully agree with the mayors and all of that, but I think you get a whole lot more power when you start using the provincial government.
Are there any other questions from council? Councillor Hopful, could you please unmute?
So do we need to make a recommendation that we send a letter, or is a letter already under works?
Mr. Deniger, would you please unmute? Go ahead.
Hi, no letter has been written yet, but if you give us a resolution to write a letter, we will do so.
Councillor Hopful, go ahead.
So can I make a resolution that we write a letter to, is it 100 Mile, and ask them, well, I believe in that we need to stand as a united front for political pressure, but I also think we should include Jackie Taggart and Brad Viss and do whatever we can to put some pressure where we definitely need to put some pressure.
Mr. Deniger, would you unmute your microphone?
Yes, it could be a fairly broad resolution directing staff and the mayor to work with various levels of government and other affected communities to apply political pressure to CN to reconsider their decision. We can work from that.
Yes, please.
Thank you. If you'll just bear with me for a moment, I'm going to write this resolution and put it up on everyone's screens.
Feel free to make it more eloquent than I said.
And me too.
Okay, I'm going to share this up to your monitors now. I can change that if it doesn't work for anyone. Mr. Deniger, are you okay with that resolution?
That works for me. Mayor has something.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
It covers it broadly, and I think it gives us room in terms of where we can put it together with some of the statements, because obviously I don't have that at the tip of my tongue, but we got to take that ask out. We got to figure out another thing with regard to CN. We're not going to ask CN because we say no. We have to. We can't say demand either. So there has to be a better word that we engage the local communities and our MP and our MLA to lobby on, to intervene on our behalf to engage CN to maintain the present level of service, blah, 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 something along that line. I just don't like the word ask.
Just a moment, I will update this. I'm sorry, what was that last part, Mr. Mayor? To intervene with CN to reassess the decision for the line closure and to? And you'll have to unmute your microphone again, sir.
And to maintain present level of servicing. The CAO and I may change it politely, but I think that would give us the gist of this letter. Is that not fair, Mr. Deniger?
Yeah, this gives us enough information to go on. I think it's pretty clear if council passes this, what our jobs are to do.
So that's moved. Is that moved by Councillor Hoffel? Who seconds it?
Councillor Howe.
Okay, I'll call the question. Those in favor? Those opposed? Any?
Motion carries.
What about the previous table of acceptance of the, or am I getting too detailed, acceptance of the correspondence?
I believe we've met the
Okay.
process requirements.
Thank you.
Councillor Leach, you may return to the room. Go ahead, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. We'll move on to 17, media and public question period, 17.1. Due to the format of this meeting and the 60-second delay on the broadcast, council is unable to efficiently accept questions from the media or public in this venue. Council asks that any member of the public reach out to district staff at the conclusion of the meeting with any questions for staff and for council. Thank you. We will now go into closed session. Staff recommends item 18.1 that the meeting of the District of Lillooet Council be closed to the public pursuant to the Community Charter Provisions, Section 91J. Information that is prohibited or information that, if it were presented in a document, would be prohibited from disclosure under Section 21 of the Freedom of Information and Protection of Privacy Act. Who will move?
Councillor Howe.
Second.
Councillor Weed.
Call the question. Those in favor? Carried.
Thank you, everyone. I will now end the live broadcast.